She has lied to you all. She only wants my money. I will not spend my life paying for your mistakes.
By noon on the first Saturday of June, almost everyone in Silver Creek had watched Evelyn Harper lose the man she was supposed to marry. Wesley Cole did not simply change his mind. He waited until Evelyn was standing beside him at the front of the church, wearing the cream-colored wedding dress she had spent 6 weeks sewing by hand. Then he turned toward nearly 100 people and told them she had deceived him. He said she had hidden debts. He said she wanted his money. And before walking out of the church, he looked directly at the woman who had trusted him for 2 years and said, "I will not spend my life paying for your mistakes." Nobody followed Evelyn when she ran outside crying. Nobody except Jonah Mercer, a rancher who had been sitting alone in the last pew. He found her standing beside the church steps while half the town watched through the windows, crying. Jonah removed his coat and held it toward her. "You don't owe any of them another minute of your humiliation," he said. Evelyn looked at the stranger, offering her the only kindness she had received that morning. She had no idea that before the summer was over, she would discover why Wesley had really abandoned her. And she had no idea that the quiet rancher standing beside her would teach her something she had stopped believing: that love wasn't supposed to make a woman smaller. If you have ever had to rebuild yourself after somebody tried to make you feel ashamed of who you were, this story may feel especially close to home. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Silver Creek, Montana Territory, 1889. 3 hours before the wedding, Evelyn Harper had believed she knew exactly what her future looked like. She was 31 years old. Her father had been gone for 5 years. Her mother had died the previous winter. What remained of the Harper family was Evelyn, a small house near Willow Creek, 160 acres her father had claimed years earlier, and a sewing business she had built from almost nothing. It was not an impressive life by the standards of Silver Creek, but it was hers. For nearly 2 years, Wesley Cole had told her he admired that about her. Wesley owned the largest dry goods store in town. He was 35, successful, well-dressed, and comfortable speaking to anyone from a ranch hand to a banker. When he first began calling on Evelyn, people told her she was fortunate. She eventually believed them. That morning, while Evelyn was getting ready for their wedding, Wesley arrived at the Harper house carrying several papers. He said they were documents connected to their marriage. Evelyn began reading them. One document transferred management of the Harper property to Wesley after they married. Another gave his business authority over any future sale. Evelyn put the papers down. "My father left that land to me. And after today, we're husband and wife. That doesn't mean I stop owning it." Wesley tried to convince her that she was misunderstanding him. Evelyn didn't argue. She simply refused to sign. Wesley collected the papers and told her they would discuss it after the ceremony. 3 hours later, they stood before Reverend Harris. Evelyn's closest friends filled the first rows. Ranch families crowded the back. Several of Wesley's business associates stood near the door. The minister had barely begun when Wesley interrupted him. He said he couldn't continue. At first, Evelyn thought he was ill. Then Wesley faced the congregation. He told them Evelyn had concealed financial obligations from him. He claimed she owed considerable money through her mother's illness and her sewing business. None of it was true, but Wesley was one of Silver Creek's most respected businessmen. Evelyn was a seamstress who lived outside town. People believed what made sense to them, and to many of them, Wesley's story made sense. Evelyn asked him why he was doing this. Wesley answered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I offered you a respectable life, Evelyn." Apparently that wasn't enough. Then he left. Within minutes, whispers filled the church. Evelyn did the only thing she could think of. She walked outside. Jonah Mercer had attended the wedding because Reverend Harris had asked him to. He barely knew Evelyn. He knew Wesley even less. Jonah owned a cattle ranch about 12 miles north of Silver Creek. He was 39 and had spent most of the previous decade caring for his father and keeping Mercer's Crossing ranch alive through drought, winter losses, and falling cattle prices. People described him as solitary. Jonah preferred dependable. He had watched the ceremony from the back pew, and he had noticed something others hadn't. Wesley had not looked like a man discovering something terrible about his bride. He had looked prepared. Outside, Jonah offered Evelyn his coat. She didn't take it immediately. "I don't need anyone feeling sorry for me." "I don't." That surprised her. "What do you feel?" Jonah glanced toward the church, disappointed in most of the people inside. For the first time that morning, Evelyn almost smiled. Jonah had brought a wagon into town for supplies. He offered to take her home. Evelyn hesitated. Walking 2 miles through Silver Creek in a wedding dress was worse. So she accepted. They traveled most of the way without speaking. When the Harper house finally appeared beyond the cottonwoods, Evelyn thanked him. Jonah helped place her small case beside the porch. Before leaving, he said something she would remember for years. What happened in that church belongs to the man who did it. Don't carry his shame for him. Then he climbed back onto his wagon. There was no flirtation, no promise, no request to see her again. And for that reason more than any other, Evelyn believed he had meant what he said. The humiliation didn't end at the church. By Monday morning, Silver Creek had already rewritten Evelyn Harper's life. According to one version, she had accumulated enormous debts. According to another, she had tried to pressure Wesley into paying them. One woman claimed Evelyn's mother had left unpaid medical expenses across 3 counties. Another said Wesley had discovered the truth only minutes before the ceremony. Evelyn tried to ignore the stories. Then customers began canceling orders. Mrs. Fenwick no longer needed the 2 dresses Evelyn was making for her daughters. Mrs. Davis decided to purchase something ready-made from Wesley's store instead. Within 2 weeks, nearly half of Evelyn's summer work disappeared. That frightened her more than the gossip. She could survive humiliation. Losing her income was different. One Tuesday afternoon, Jonah Mercer appeared at her house. He carried a bundle of torn shirts and work coats. Evelyn looked at the pile. What happened? Ranch hands. All of them. Apparently fences are stronger than fabric. She knew immediately what he was doing. You don't have to invent work for me. I didn't. Jonah placed a torn coat on the table. That's Owen's. He caught it on barbed wire. He showed her another. Ben ripped this unloading timber. Then a third. That one actually belongs to me. Evelyn inspected it. You could buy replacements. I could, but I prefer paying somebody for good work rather than throwing useful things away. She studied him. Did someone tell you my customers were leaving? Yes. And this isn't charity? No. How much work do you actually have? Jonah thought about it. Enough that I'm embarrassed by the answer. For the next month, Evelyn repaired clothing for almost every man working at Mercer's Crossing. Then Jonah asked whether she could make new winter shirts. Then blankets. Then canvas covers for supply wagons. He paid every invoice exactly as written. He never added money. He never offered gifts. And he never mentioned Wesley unless Evelyn did first. That mattered to her. At the beginning of July, Jonah arrived to collect an order and found Evelyn packing sewing supplies into a wooden crate. Going somewhere. Your ranch. He looked surprised. You said you needed measurements from 6 men. I'm not trusting ranch hands to measure themselves. Jonah considered that. A wise decision. Mercer's Crossing sat against a broad stretch of Montana grassland with low hills rising in the distance. The ranch house was larger than Evelyn expected, but plain. Nothing about Jonah's life appeared designed to impress anyone. The furniture was sturdy. The kitchen was practical. The barn was better maintained than the sitting room. Evelyn spent the afternoon measuring ranch hands who found the entire experience far more entertaining than she did. By evening, a summer storm had begun moving across the valley. Jonah told her the creek road would become difficult. There was a spare room in the ranch house, but Evelyn knew what Silver Creek would say if she stayed. I'll leave now. Jonah didn't argue. He hitched the wagon himself and asked an older ranch hand named Samuel Price to drive her home. That decision told Evelyn more about Jonah than any speech could have. He understood what gossip had already cost her, and he refused to give people another weapon. During the weeks that followed, Evelyn began noticing how differently Jonah treated people. He never raised his voice simply because someone worked for him. He didn't take credit for another person's effort. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. And when he disagreed with Evelyn, he disagreed with her. He didn't speak to her as though being kind meant pretending she was always right. Their friendship grew through ordinary things. Invoices, fabric orders, coffee at her kitchen table, arguments over which cloth would survive a Montana winter. Occasional evenings on the porch when Jonah arrived too late to return before dark. Evelyn began looking forward to those evenings. That frightened her. One night she told him, I don't trust myself anymore. Jonah knew what she meant. You trusted Wesley. Yes. And you were wrong about him. Yes. That doesn't mean you're wrong about everybody. It means I didn't see what was standing in front of me. Jonah considered her words. Maybe he spent 2 years making sure you didn't. Evelyn had blamed herself countless times. She had asked why she had not recognized Wesley's intentions, why she had believed his affection, why she had not noticed the difference between a man admiring her independence and a man waiting to control it. Jonah never told her she had been foolish. He placed the responsibility where it belonged, on Wesley. By August, Evelyn's sewing business had recovered, not because Silver Creek had suddenly become kinder. Most of her new customers came from ranches outside town. Word had spread about the quality of her work. Then something happened that changed the entire story. A surveyor arrived at the Harper property. Evelyn found him near the western boundary one morning. He introduced himself as Frederick Lowe. He worked with a company preparing possible routes for a new railway extension. One proposed line crossed part of Evelyn's land. More importantly, the creek running through the southern edge made her property unusually valuable for a water stop and small freight station. The company had not made a final decision, but if the route was approved, the Harper land could become worth several times its present value. Evelyn thanked him for the information. Then she remembered the papers Wesley had brought on their wedding morning. Authority over future sale of the property, management rights, business control. For the first time, Evelyn wondered whether her humiliation had ever been about marriage. She rode into Silver Creek the following morning. The county clerk remembered Wesley visiting the office several times during the spring. He had asked about property boundaries near Willow Creek. He had also requested information about proposed railway surveys. Weeks before the wedding, Evelyn's anger changed. Until then, part of her had still carried the private belief that Wesley had rejected her. Now she understood something worse. He had wanted something, and when she refused to give it to him, he had punished her in front of the entire town. 2 days later, Wesley came to her house. It was the first time Evelyn had seen him since the wedding. He arrived alone. No expensive coat. No business smile. He said he had made a mistake. Evelyn stood on her porch and listened. "I was angry that morning," Wesley said. "You seemed very prepared for an angry man. I said things I regret. You said things that cost me almost half my customers. I can repair that." That sentence told her everything. Not apologize. Repair. As though her reputation were merchandise he could replace. Wesley said they could begin again. He said people in town would forget. He said he was willing to overlook everything that had happened. Evelyn almost laughed. "You're willing to overlook what you did to me?" Wesley changed the subject. Then he asked about the railway survey. There it was. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. "You knew?" "Knew what?" "You knew before the wedding that the railway company was considering my property." Wesley's answer came too slowly. Evelyn continued. "You weren't marrying me because you wanted a life with me. You were marrying the Harper land. That isn't fair, wasn't it? We would have benefited together. If that were true, you would have told me." Wesley tried another argument. He said a woman alone could easily be cheated by railway investors. He said managing a transaction of that size required business experience. He said Evelyn would need someone. Evelyn understood him perfectly. "You mean I would need you? I know how these things work. And I know how you work now." Wesley left angry. 3 days later, rumors began again. This time they concerned Jonah. People said Jonah Mercer had learned about the railway first. They said he had deliberately become close to Evelyn because Mercer's crossing bordered her property. They said he hoped to control both parcels if they married. Evelyn wanted to dismiss it, but the old fear returned. She had trusted Wesley once. What if she was doing the same thing again? When Jonah came to her house that evening, Evelyn asked him directly, "Did you know about the railroad?" Jonah didn't pretend not to understand. "I heard there was a possibility. When, about 3 weeks ago." Evelyn's disappointment was immediate. "You didn't tell me. I was trying to find out whether the report was real. You still should have told me." "Yes." Jonah didn't defend himself. That made her angrier for a moment. Then he continued, "I should have told you the moment I heard it. I didn't because after what Wesley did, I knew exactly how it would look if I came here talking about the value of your land. So you decided for me." "Yes." "And that was wrong." "Yes." Evelyn had expected an argument. Instead, Jonah simply accepted responsibility. Then he reached into his coat and placed an envelope on the porch table. Inside were letters between Jonah and a railway representative. The representative had approached Jonah first about purchasing access through part of Mercer's crossing. Jonah had refused to discuss Evelyn's property on her behalf. One sentence in his response was underlined. "Miss Harper's land belongs to Miss Harper." Any offer concerning it should be made directly to her. The letter was dated before Jonah had learned she knew anything about the railway. Evelyn read it twice. You could have bought my land cheaply after the wedding. Yes. You could have believed the rumors about my debts. Yes. You didn't. No. Why? Jonah looked across the field before answering. Because the first time I really saw you, you were standing in front of a church full of people who had decided what kind of woman you were without asking you a single question. He looked back at her. I had no intention of becoming another one of them. That evening was the first time Evelyn allowed herself to consider that what she felt for Jonah might be more than gratitude. But neither of them said it. Not yet. Wesley had not finished. At the beginning of September, Evelyn received notice of a claim against her property. Wesley Cole's store alleged that the Harper estate owed more than $900. Supplies, medicine, funeral expenses, fabric purchased on credit. If the debt was valid, Wesley could place a lien against the land before the railway company completed any purchase. Evelyn understood what he was doing. If she couldn't sell without settling the debt, Wesley could force her to negotiate. Jonah wanted to hire a lawyer. Evelyn refused his money. I'll accept advice. I will not have Wesley telling this town another man paid my way out. Jonah respected the decision. The county hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. For 6 days, Evelyn went through every receipt her mother had saved. She found payments, old account books, letters, anything connected to Wesley's store. Mabel Hart, who owned Silver Creek's boarding house and had known Evelyn's mother for 20 years, came to help. So did Reverend Harris. Then Samuel Price arrived with records from a freight company showing that several items Wesley claimed to have supplied to the Harpers had never been delivered to their address. One by one, the story Wesley had created began coming apart. The most important discovery came from Evelyn herself. Hidden among her father's papers was a receipt dated 4 months before his death. It showed that the Harper account at Cole Dry Goods had been settled completely. The signature belonged to Wesley's father, who had owned the business at the time. Every legitimate family debt before that date had been paid. Most of Wesley's claim had been manufactured afterward. On Thursday morning, Silver Creek gathered again. Not inside the church this time. Inside the county meeting hall. Many of the same people who had watched Evelyn's humiliation in June now watched her walk toward the front of the room. Jonah sat near the back, exactly where he had sat during the wedding. Wesley presented his claim first. He spoke confidently. Then Evelyn presented hers. She did not ask Jonah to speak. She did not ask anyone to defend her character. She presented receipts, dates, ledgers, freight records. Finally, the county clerk produced something Evelyn had not seen. Wesley had first asked about placing a lien against the Harper property 2 days before their wedding, before he had supposedly discovered Evelyn's debts, before he had supposedly learned she had deceived him. The room became quiet. The story was suddenly simple. Wesley knew the property might become valuable. Evelyn refused to surrender control of it. So he had attempted to destroy her reputation and create a financial claim against the land. The county rejected Wesley's lien. The railway company negotiated directly with Evelyn. She sold only a narrow section along the western boundary and kept the house, the creek, and most of her father's property. The payment was enough to change her life. But Evelyn did not leave Silver Creek. That surprised people. She enlarged her sewing business instead. She hired 2 women, then 3. One was a widow with 2 children whose husband had died the previous winter. Another was a young woman saving enough money to buy her own boarding house room instead of living with relatives who controlled her wages. Evelyn knew what it felt like when somebody tried to make a woman believe her future depended entirely on them. She refused to build a business that did the same thing. People who had stopped speaking to her slowly returned. Some apologized. Others behaved as if nothing had happened. Evelyn learned that forgiveness did not require pretending. She was polite, but she remembered. Wesley eventually sold his store and left Silver Creek. No dramatic crowd chased him from town. No one needed to. The respect he valued most was already gone. Autumn came early that year. One evening in October, Jonah visited Evelyn after returning from a cattle drive. They sat on her porch overlooking Willow Creek. For months, he had been careful with her. Almost too careful. Evelyn finally asked him why. Jonah knew what she meant. Because you spent 2 years with a man who wanted something from you. And I didn't want you wondering whether every kindness came with a price. Evelyn looked toward the fading light beyond the field. Does yours? Yes. She turned toward him. Jonah continued, I would like to court you. Evelyn smiled. That isn't exactly a terrible price. I haven't finished. All right. I don't want your land. I know. I don't want the railway money. I know. I don't need you to stop working. Good. And I don't expect you to say yes, because I happened to be standing in the back of a church one morning. Evelyn waited. Jonah looked at her. I want the woman who walked out of that church. The one who built her business again. The one who faced Wesley herself. The one who argued with me for 20 minutes because I ordered the wrong wool. It was terrible wool. It was expensive wool. That made it worse. Jonah smiled. Evelyn had spent months wondering whether she could trust herself again. She finally understood that trust was not the absence of risk. It was paying attention to what a person repeatedly showed you. Wesley had constantly talked about what he could give her. Jonah had never asked her to become indebted to him. Wesley had praised her independence until it interfered with his plans. Jonah had protected it even when doing so meant disagreeing with her. Wesley wanted Evelyn to need him. Jonah simply wanted her to choose him. So she did. They courted through the winter. Slowly. Without promises they weren't ready to make. The following spring, Jonah asked Evelyn to marry him. He didn't ask inside a crowded church. He didn't gather witnesses. He came to her porch one evening after supper. And before asking the question, he said something Evelyn would later repeat to their children. I don't want to give you a new life. You've already made one. I'd just like to share it with you. Evelyn said yes. Their wedding took place in the same church where Wesley had abandoned her. Some people thought she would choose somewhere else. Evelyn never considered it. She refused to surrender a place simply because it contained a painful memory. Mabel Hart helped her dress that morning. The gown was not the one she had worn before. Evelyn had taken that dress apart months earlier. Some of the fabric became curtains for her sewing room. Some became lining for a winter coat. She had no interest in preserving a symbol of the worst morning of her life. Her new dress was simple, blue-gray, hand-sewn, exactly what she wanted. When Evelyn reached the church doors, she paused. 1 year earlier, she had walked out of those same doors believing the entire town had watched her life end. Now she understood how wrong she had been. Something had ended that day, but it wasn't her future. It was the life she would have lived with a man who measured love by how much control he possessed. Jonah was waiting at the front. He didn't rescue her from anything. He didn't need to. Evelyn walked toward him because she wanted to. Years later, when people in Silver Creek told the story, many remembered Jonah Mercer as the rancher who stood up when everyone else remained seated. Evelyn remembered that part too, but it wasn't the reason she loved him. She loved him because after he stood up, he never tried to stand in front of her. He stood beside her. And sometimes that is the difference between the person who wants to possess your life and the person who deserves a place in it. Evelyn had once believed the greatest humiliation of her life happened when Wesley Cole refused to marry her. With time, she understood that being rejected by the wrong man had saved her from spending years trying to earn the right man's behavior from someone incapable of giving it. The church had been full the morning Wesley walked away. But the most important person Evelyn found that day was not the rancher in the back pew. It was herself, because love did eventually find her. But dignity came first. If you believe love can find us after heartbreak, subscribe and join us for the next story.